Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We got something different for today. We're doing 5 reasons why you shouldn't mess with the USA.
Ooh.
No idea what to expect on this one. We're just trying to source out some new content to check out. You know, YouTube is full of very interesting topics, and we figured we'd broach something else. I'm sure there's reasons why you don't want to mess with other countries as well. So if this is a good video, and you guys have other ones that you can recommend along these lines, we've also been doing a little bit of history, right?
Yep.
The last one that we did was the American Civil War.
Yeah, and that was cool because we're not American, so to learn a little bit more about that was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. We learned about Abraham Lincoln, and you guys were even saying that we should watch the movie about Abraham Lincoln, which might be cool to check out now that we have some backstory. So anyways, we're going to check out something new, like I said. 5 reasons you shouldn't mess with the USA.
Let's do it.
The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 90s left the United States as the sole superpower in the world, and it's never looked back. In all aspects of the world, the United States is indeed a superpower, especially when it comes to its military might, which is unsurpassable in its strength, technological superiority, operational capabilities, and power projection across the globe. In this video, we'll take a look at the 5 top reasons why you wouldn't want to go against the US military establishment. The United States Air Force is the strongest in the world, not only in the number of operational aircraft, but also in technological superiority. The country currently operates a total of over 15,000 military aircraft, combining all the branches of the military service, including the US Navy, US Army, Coast Guard, and the US Marines. As of 2017, the US Air Force alone has a fleet of over 5,300 aircraft, 406 intercontinental ballistic missiles, and 170 military satellites, greater than any other country in the world. The USA has the largest number of stealth aircraft designed to be silent killers and untrackable by the radar defense systems of most countries in the world. Some of these stealth aircraft include air superiority fighters, such as the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, heavy bombers, such as the B-2 Spirit. In fact, the United States pioneered this technology in the 1980s with the introduction of the F-117 Nighthawk stealth attack aircraft. Stealth aircraft are designed to avoid detection using a variety of technologies that reduce radar reflection from ground, sea, or air-based radar antennas, thereby reducing its radar cross-section, or RCS. This revolutionary technology allows a 5th-generation aircraft, such as the F-22 Raptor, with a max takeoff weight of 83,500 pounds, to have a radar cross-section of just 0.0001 meters squared, about the size of a bumblebee. What's more insane is that the massive B-2 bomber also
size of a bumblebee.
That's wild.
That's crazy. It also is crazy to think about the fact that, you know, obviously there are wars that go on, proxy wars that are going on in the world, but there's never been a large scale conflict they haven't had to use all of the technology thus far. And it's really I immediately had these almost anxiety based thoughts where I'm like, how bad it would be if we ever got to that scenario where they have these lethal weapons. And now it's probably even Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon, shut up. It's so crazy to think that there's probably weapons far beyond what these capabilities are going to show today as well.
Because this is just what they let you know about.
Missiles and all this other stuff. Anyways, that was just my thoughts. I was like, these are going to probably sound so wild, and then we haven't even actually had to use them at this point and their capabilities to the fullness, right?
Yeah, or imagine being in something that big and people can only detect it the size of a bumblebee.
Right.
What?
83,500 pounds.
Size of a bumblebee. What's more insane is that the massive B-2 bomber also has the same radar cross-section as the F-22 Raptor. Thus, it becomes extremely difficult to track stealth aircraft. Even if the enemy spots them on their radar scopes, it's a whole other story to successfully track them and register a missile kill. The whole idea behind this technology is to break the chain in which a conventional surface-to-air missile defense system works. It's the same reason countries like China and Russia are also hard at developing their own stealth fighter, the Chengdu J-20 and the Sukhoi Su-57, respectively. These aircraft will allow the US Air Force to assert its air superiority over any battlefield of the future, and we all know that control of these skies is the biggest decider in any war. The next reason why any country going to war with the US military should think twice is because of the strength of the US Navy and its dominance over the world's ocean, especially the Navy's supercarriers. The US Navy currently operates 11 nuclear-powered Nimitz-class supercarriers, which is the largest aircraft carrier fleet in the world. The only Navy that can come close in terms of technological advancement is probably the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom, but they only have 2 operational carriers. The Nimitz class of carriers has a displacement of over 100,000 tons and can carry a complement of up to 70 aircraft. They're literally a floating small town in the ocean with its own airport. The Nimitz-class carriers in themselves are extremely potent offensive weapons, but the way they operate in what is called the carrier strike groups makes these ships even more deadly. A carrier seldom deploys alone. There are always a fleet of surface and underwater assets surrounding them and forming a strike group. These include guided missile cruisers, a destroyer squadron, attack submarines, and other support vessels. Together, they project the power of the carrier and at the center of the group forward towards the enemy. While the carrier is carrying out its offensive role with the use of its air wing, the other ships are responsible to protect its flanks against any enemy attack. This combination of offensive and defensive strategy makes the US Carrier Strike Group almost impenetrable. The United States Navy maintains 9 such carrier strike groups, 8 of which are based in the United States and 1 that's forward deployed to Japan. For over 50 years, this has been the principal element of US power protection, and the Nimitz class of supercarriers are at the center of it all. Despite this, the US is currently in the process of developing a new class of carriers called the Gerald R. Ford class, intended to replace the Nimitz-class ships. This new supercarrier will be even more technologically advanced and is expected to continue US dominance of the oceans well into the late 21st century. The third reason why you shouldn't fight the US military is their...
That's pretty wild. Like, I knew that the US Navy was the best in the world, but I didn't know it was like that far beyond, especially from the carrier standpoint of them having 11 and the next closest country having 2.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild in terms of their dominance. And I think like other competing major countries, like they mentioned China about the skies in the aircraft.
China and Russia.
Well, they mentioned the aircraft, and when we were talking about the aircraft, and China has specific aircraft that they use and deploy, right? I don't think China has a very good Navy, if at all. So it's kind of crazy that, like with the U.S., that they've got it all covered on all fronts. Yeah. Right? And I wonder, how much the spending of the military-industrial complex this has consumed developing all this stuff. I mean, clearly it's paid off because people don't want to mess with them on a broad scale, whether it's economic or military conflict or anything, right? But anything. Anyways, anything you wanted to add before we continue on to number 3?
Yeah, one thing I thought was cool that I've never really thought of it, but it makes sense, is that for every one of the ships, like the fleets that are above water, you have 3 on, I think it was 3 on either side underwater, right? So that's the thing that always kind of makes me scared about the Navy or water-based conflict, is you can't see what's going on underwater. So you don't know what's coming. If you're above water, you don't know what's going on down underneath.
Well, I mean, it's worse in both ways, right? Because even if you're in the air with the radar, you can't tell, right? You can't pick them up then. So that's the whole thing. It's stealth on both underwater, above water. You don't know what's coming, right? Yeah. But I think one other thing I'll point out before we get it back into it is I think it's also important to mention that strategy plays a big role, right?
Yes, of course.
And we talked about the way that they deploy is supposed to be strategic in terms of covering flanks and stuff like that. But I mean, you could have all this, firepower, but if you don't know how to use it properly, somebody can, blow that out of the water very, very quickly if they catch you
yeah.
off guard, or if your strategies, you've missed the line and
Yeah.
put all your assets in one place. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot more that goes into this. Obviously, these are reasons you shouldn't mess with the USA.
Yeah.
And it's, like we said, Navy
Well, you
was
also have
very
to
valid.
remember that, and obviously they go through training, but you also have to remember that these are humans operating
Exactly.
all these machines.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Well, for now.
yes, until all the robots take over.
Until AI starts controlling all the military.
Yeah, but I mean, your army is only like you're basically your machine or your weapon's only as strong as the person operating it,
exactly.
right? So yeah.
Massive stockpile of nuclear and conventional intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. The ICBM plays the role of the land leg in the US nuclear triad, along with the Trident submarine-launched ballistic missile SLBM and nuclear warheads carried on long-range strategic bombers. ICBMs are launched from ground-based missile silos, achieving high suborbital spaceflight, approximately 1,000 miles above the surface of the Earth. The body of the missile then separates from the warhead, which re-enters the atmosphere and free falls to the assigned target at hypersonic speeds. The US military currently operates 400 ICBMs from its base in Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota. The LGM-30G Minuteman III is the only type of ICBM that is currently operational in the US. The Minuteman III family of ICBMs were first developed in the 1960s as a response to the Soviet nuclear threat. Throughout the Cold War and beyond, these missiles have undergone constant modernization. In the last decade alone, the US military has undertaken $7 billion worth of upgrades. The rocket propulsion engines, the propellants used, the guidance system, and even the flight control surfaces have all been refurbished. The upgraded missiles are completely different from its 1960s counterparts, except for the shell. These state-of-the-art improvements and modernization programs have kept the Minuteman III system operational for over 50 years, with improved reliability that supports the missile's remarkable 99% alert rate. The latest versions of the missiles have a range of over 8,000 miles, which is greater than the diameter of the Earth at 7,917.5 miles. They can carry multiple 330 kiloton nuclear warheads, which is 20 times greater than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That's great.
Not only that, each of these warheads can be assigned to different targets independently. The technology is called Multiple Independently Targetable Re-Entry Vehicle, or MIRV, and was first developed for the Minuteman III family of missiles. So any country messing with the United States will have to deal with this awesome arsenal of firepower, which can be launched at a moment's notice. If it weren't the ICBMs or the stealth
Now that's scary. Yeah. That, in a split second, the whole world could change.
It's also wild that you can set them up to hit like multiple different places at once.
Yeah. Side note as well, this sounds like we're listening to a Batman movie.
Like the
With
music
in the
soundtrack.
background.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's like the villain portion of the last part anyways.
Yeah.
fighters raining fire down on you. It would be precision-guided munitions, or better known as smart bombs or PGMs instead. This is another big reason why not messing with the US military is a good idea. All branches of the US military use smart bombs in some forms or the other. These weapon systems are designed to be precise and hit a specific target with maximum efficiency. These bombs are so effective that during the First Gulf War, PGMs comprised only 9% of weapons fired, but accounted for 75% of all successful hits. Since then, for the US military at least, the days of normal artillery shells and unguided bombs are long gone. Nowadays, the military uses PGMs from air, ground, and sea.
Crazy.
Precision-guided munitions come in various forms and use different kinds of technologies to achieve precise hits. A large majority of PGMs use the Global Positioning System, or GPS, of satellites to guide their trajectory to target. However, sometimes this becomes a problem, as GPS coverage is not always reliably available everywhere across the globe, or bad weather conditions can hinder operations. Thus, the Office of Naval Research, the Naval Surface Warfare Center, and the Army Research Laboratory have all coordinated to develop the first ever artillery-fired smart munition that will not use GPS guidance. The project is known as Moving Target Artillery Round, or MTAR for short. The MTAR shell can be guided onto stationary as well as moving targets in both land and sea, using a combination of guidance technology. The best part is that these shells can be fired from the existing M777A2 155mm towed howitzer and the M109A7 Paladin integrated management self-propelled 155mm artillery systems already in use by the US military. The shells will also feature an extended range of 40 to 60 miles using rocket boosters to propel them. Once finished, it will afford the US military another potent weapon system that outclasses others around the world. Lastly, the fifth and final reason why you shouldn't fight the US military is drones. We're all familiar with what an unmanned aerial vehicle or drone is and what it's supposed to do. But in recent years, the usability of UAVs are steadily increasing to encompass all spheres of military operations, and the US military is the pioneering spirit behind it. At first, used only for surveillance missions, drones were quickly weaponized after the 9/11 attacks and have been extensively used by the US military in the war against terror as an offensive weapon platform. It's forecasted that over the next decades, the US is in line to purchase over 1,000 combat drones of various classifications. Some of them, like the Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel and the Boeing MQ-25 Stingray, are already in the final stages of development, and once finished, will provide the US military with state-of-the-art platforms capable of multi-role operations, ranging from attack missions to aerial refueling. Drone technology has reached such heights today that a single UAV can loiter miles above the surface of the Earth for hours, waiting for the target to show its head and sticking with impunity.
Wild.
This capability will allow all the services under the US military to reduce its dependency on manned platforms, thereby reducing the risks during future combat operations. These 5 weapon systems make the US military extremely dangerous for any adversary looking to get into a conflict with them.
I would say so.
In a conventional warfare setting, it's almost impossible to beat the US military machine. That's why modern enemies of the United States are employing more and more asymmetric warfare strategies against the mighty US military. Despite that, the US military juggernaut is hands down the most powerful military complex in the world today, and probably will be for decades to come. That's all we have for you today, folks. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you liked the video and want to stay up to date on cool military stuff like this, then click the subscribe button and also click the notification bell, and you'll be the first to know the next time we release a video. Thanks for watching.
Damn.
Yeah, so I mean, just watching that, right? Like, they were talking about the drones, for instance, and how that would play into your head as well, the way you're thinking as an enemy, right? Knowing that this drone can just fly around and wait for you.
Literally forever. Like
to pop your head
forever,
out.
but
And,
for a long time.
it's unmanned, so you don't have to worry about, food, water, anything like that, right? Like, just, somebody can switch over on their shift and have somebody that's controlling it from their desk switch over to the next person.
Yeah.
So as an enemy, you're like, it's scary to think about that. If you were an enemy in that position, also makes me think of just the technology in general, right? Being used against any person, right? In this instance, we're talking about the USA versus its enemies. But, obviously technology can be used in different ways by different countries and different, leadership groups. Also, like, I wonder, how this plays into, because we saw even on the screen there, they had Lockheed Martin and Boeing, right? Those were the two companies, and they're part of aerospace and the military industrial complex and all that. So, more recently, we've heard about Boeing really struggling with their aircraft for carriers, for just regular commercial flights.
Yeah.
And doors are falling off and stuff. That's in the news, right?
I've been hearing a lot of stuff about people not feeling comfortable going on them.
Yeah. So, it kind of makes me a little bit worrisome in that if they're making this military technology, right? What if that isn't up to quality control standards?
Yeah.
And, you fire a missile or something like that and it goes awry and doesn't do what it's supposed to, and how that could lead into a serious conflict otherwise.
Yeah.
They've poured so much money, like they said, $70 billion more recently into the military industrial complex. And
I think they said that was just into upgrading that one type of missile.
Right, that would make sense, because I was just going to say I think we've been putting like trillions of dollars into it at this point.
Yeah.
So just in light of that, you're pouring all this money into it, but does it necessarily mean that it's being developed in the right way still?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the case.
Yeah.
But anyways, you were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say a couple of things. I think for your point right there, I think it's also challenging because not that I want them to go be testing it out on everybody, but a lot of these things are doing all these upgrades and they're creating all these things, but it's like, where are you actually testing it to see its real life, like in action, in a legit combat efficacy, right? Because there's nowhere for you to really have that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of it's probably sophisticated computer models and modeling that they're using, and testing grounds I'm sure that they have in certain areas which are off limits to the public and nobody sees and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm just saying more so like when you're actually getting into a combat, like if that's really its first use case scenario in a real situation like that, it's like, are you fully knowing it's reliable?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the atomic bomb, right? Like
they
had tested it and, were anticipating what it was going to do, but they didn't know
what
the
it was
full
going to do
repercussions of it until they used it, right?
Exactly. Another thing I was going to say is the drone thing, right? It's like, obviously you said you have the benefit as the country using it that you don't have to like wait for somebody they don't have to eat, they don't have to sleep, they don't have to take a break, they can just stay there and wait. But it's also still a form of technology, right? And I understand obviously military grade technology has a lot of security, but it's still like somebody out there probably could find some way to hack something like that, right? So if all of a sudden they said that they were going to be reducing like man-based reliable operations to save lives, right? Because you don't have to put people in the line of fire. But it's like if most of your weapons are now machines and they can be hacked, it's like all your machines can turn on you pretty quick if that's if something goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly not experts in this space and we're learning. That's why
I'm just taking like absolute worst case scenario.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, we are making comments that, other people can probably elaborate on the sophistication of.
For sure.
But in light of what you did say, they didn't touch on cybersecurity in this, right? Which I think is a new development in the world, that this is all based on gun power, basically, right? And manpower to some extent, but technological advancements as well. But part of those technological advancements are now cybersecurity, in that if what happens, for instance, if so many of these weapons are, reliant on technology to function, and, there's an electrical outage or something like that due to hacking or, a cyber attack of sorts,
power grid blackout everywhere.
Does that render, how much does that render a military industrial complex useless, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure they have their own section of cybersecurity, and I think they have even Space Force at this point. So I won't even touch on that.
Wild.
But it's just it's interesting to look at this and your wheels start turning about all the effects that can happen, domino effects that can go from one to the next, and how fragile the world can be. But this really highlights it with how powerful these things are.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And I honestly, I'm not really a big like military gal, so I didn't really know very much about any of this. But it's just crazy when you obviously know that the United States has had a lot of power and they're regarded as like the most powerful country in the world. But then it's like you don't really know the ins and outs of it, right? Like seeing all of this, you're like, oh.
Yeah, it definitely puts it into your vantage point of how powerful they can be, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed our reaction to 5 reasons you shouldn't mess with USA. Let us know if there's anything else that you want us to check out. If you found this interesting, let us know in the comments. If you learned something, if you want to add to anything that we discussed, we appreciate your insights. And like I said, we got some history, we got music, we got sports, we got comedy.
Yep.
So if you're new, hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the notification bell, and we got 2 more videos that'll be uploaded tomorrow.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.